Falling for You. Written by Just Thinking Drabbles. Read by Arashi. Vestras fear nothing. How can we be afraid of the darkness when we too live within the shadows? These fears of yours are foolish, boy, and you'd better learn to get over them soon. There's far worse things than this that you will face. Several years and a war have transpired since these words were first spoken to Hubert, and though the man who had spoken them was long dead and gone, they still seemed to hold him captive, as he was reminded of them when faced with all of his failings, all of his fears. He hated to admit that he had felt things like terror and anguish. It made him feel too vulnerable, and he knew not how to deal with it. Concocting a potent poison, casting a complex spell, equipping a variety of different types of knives for the deeds he performed in the dead of night. These things he could do. These things were what he was made for. But emotions, especially ones so strong they made him freeze in horror or surprise, were never things that he was taught to navigate. Now he was having to learn how to deal with things like fear and love, and what he had discovered was that it was far easier to stick a knife through an opponent's back than admit that to his loved ones, that he too could be scared. It wasn't Ferdinand's fault exactly that had led them to the situation they found themselves in, but Hubert wanted to blame him nonetheless, since it was his suggestion that had them trekking through the mountains near their base camp. Yet he could not pin it all on him, since he was the one who accepted the offer. And why had he done that, he wondered? Perhaps because of the pleading gaze he'd received from Ferdinand when he had asked him. It looked something close to a puppy when it begged, and Hubert couldn't ignore it. He was just a man, and a look like that from Ferdinand von Eyre was not easily ignored. As they traveled further up the dirt path, Hubert did his best to focus on the lovely sound of his boyfriend's voice, as he spoke about some opera he saw when he was a child, the sound of nearby birds chirping, the crunch of twigs and leaves beneath his boot, anything to distract him from the thought that, at any given moment, he could slip and fall down the mountainside. Somehow, though, it seemed that, in thinking upon his worries, he brought the ruin of it to fruition. He wasn't sure exactly how it happened, but one moment he was walking, and the next he was slipping over uneven earth. He landed on the ground gracelessly and felt an immediate pain overwhelm his ankle. "Hubert!" Ferdinand shouted as he bent down to check on him. "What happened? Are you hurt?"
"I'm fine," he lied through gritted teeth. "It was just a...
he hissed as he tried to stand on his left foot, and caused a twinge of pain to jolt through him. Well, damn. Perhaps he was a bit more injured than he thought. "This is not good. You must have hurt your ankle. I shall have to carry you back to camp so we can see a healer."
"You want to do what? Wouldn't first aid not be a better solution to that?
We do not have anything to wrap it in. Besides, we don't know how badly you are hurt. It could be broken."
"Well, I would prefer to avoid the humiliation of being carried through the base like some sort of hapless maiden in a fairy tale. I'll walk, thank you," Ferdinand tisked.
"My love, do not be stubborn. You cannot walk like that. It will make the injury worse." Hubert ignored his concerns and tried to stand again, determined to avoid what happened to be the inevitable outcome of being carried back to camp. Thankfully, Ferdinand did not say anything as he watched his horrendous attempts at trying to stand, which he was grateful for, since he was sure that he looked very much like a baby deer when first learning how to use its legs. After his third attempt of trying and failing to get off the ground, however, he looked up at him with an expression easily classified as a pout and gave a heavy sigh through his nose. "Ferdinand." "Yes?" he asked, looking far too pleased with himself than Hubert liked. "Would you please assist me in returning to the camp?" "I would be delighted to. But first..." Ferdinand leaned forward and kissed him gently. It was nothing heated, simply the chaste blush of lips, so soft it almost felt phantom, yet it sent sparks coursing through Hubert nonetheless, and for the briefest of seconds he forgot about the pain in his ankle and the irritation he felt at being carried back down the mountain. All around him he felt Ferdinand, his lovely king hair, the rosy scent of his perfume, the warmth of his fingers as they sat firmly on Hubert's shoulders, and the feeling of his smile as they kissed. He would be content to stay there forever, injured foot or no. When Ferdinand pulled away, Hubert opened his eyes slowly and gave him a curious glance, causing him to chuckle. "A kiss to help you feel better," he replied, and there was so much eagerness in his voice that he couldn't help but give a breathy laugh of his own. "Are those not supposed to be placed at the point of pain instead? You are right. Perhaps I shall have to gift you another once you are properly cared for." With a promise like that waiting upon their return, Hubert felt he couldn't be too angry about being assisted back to camp. While the emotions he felt towards the man were still new and daunting, he knew that they were worth it. So long as he had Ferdinand by his side, he could overcome anything.